You are welcome back to Tuntum Network, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to have you here again. Thank you to those who are subscribed to this channel and those who are helping us share. God bless you. In today's episode, we are looking at marriages in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is changing. The Africa that we knew 20, 30 years ago isn't the same Africa we have today. But in some parts of Africa, things are almost like before. So we are looking at the top 5 countries in Africa where divorce rate is high and the top 5 countries in Africa where divorce rate is low. I'm doing this research and I went to divorce.com and they've done a survey for last year and it's actually on the world. And the countries that are on the list are quite interesting, so I want to bring that to your attention. But trust me, Africa is not like before. But out of that, typically of me, I care about what mostly pertain to Africa. So I was looking out for African countries that made the list on both ends. Marriages are not for better, for worse. Marriages are not till death do us part like before in Africa. So let's take a look at these countries. I'll start with the top 5 countries in Africa with the lowest divorce rate. Mozambique is the one country in Africa with the lowest divorce rate. And the list goes like this. So it's Mozambique, South Africa, Libya, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. But if you go on different websites, you find these same countries, but in different order. But a good thing for them is they are on the list of the top 5 African countries with the lowest divorce rates. So let's start off with Mozambique and find out what has been some of the contributing factors as to the success of marriages in Mozambique. The first thing that popped up, which wasn't surprising to me at all, was about how they marry. And it's more customary than civil marriages, where customary marriages, takes place in the terms of customs of the community, and the civil marriages takes place in a church or in front of a magistrate. But I had to dig deeper and see what is actually sustaining their marriages, because in Ghana and in other places in Africa, the customary marriages are most predominant, but yet divorce rates are increasing. Then the weirdest custom popped up again, which is most of these ladies who are given off in marriages would have to actually be virgins before they are given out. The guy sleeps with her on the first day and she ought to bleed, or else she would have been seen as sort of a second hand or something. When I was doing the research, I was quite careful to look out for all those things. So I researched further and I found out about 48% of women between the ages of 20 to 24 are already given out in marriages before they hit age 18 in Mozambique. Meaning that by the time a young girl is about 18 years old, she already knows who the husband is. Both families had already agreed. Certain customary rites may have been done. So the girl doesn't really have options at this point. And that kind of also explains why their marriages last. Because at that point, the lady hasn't actually experienced anything out of any guy. She has no experience and she gets into know one man. And it's one man all the way. I don't know if that is good or bad. But at the end of the day, families are kept together. Marriages are sustained. Children are raised in a family setting. And that sort of continues moving forward. So I took a look at the second on the list, which is South Africa. But South Africa and Zimbabwe are literally cousins. They share most of their cultures. They actually call dowries lobola. Very beautiful word. I used to hear it quite often in South Africa when I was there. Now, what are sustained marriages in South Africa and in Zimbabwe? The trick has to do with the lobola. Okay, I remember I used to have this conversation with a lady in South Africa, and she would tell me the lobola sort of guarantees the sustainability of the marriage moving forward. And I was like, how? And I remember she would say, once the lobola is paid, and it's not a little amount, it's a lot of money depending on the standard of the lady. If she's educated, if she has a master's degree, if she has a good job and all that, if she's very beautiful, then you pay more. So, and it could be from a few, $1,000 to a lot of $1,000. I remember at the time there was a lady friend I went to a wedding and the guy had to pay around $10,000 in lobola, but they would charge according to the prices of a cow or so. So once that money is paid to the woman's family, it sort of sealed it. In some cases, in order for a divorce to occur in maybe Zimbabwe or South Africa, the lady might have to pay back the lobola to the husband's family or the husband. And that wouldn't be a situation the lady would want to go through. But one thing I also experienced in South Africa for this, and it's not actually an insult because it's also happening in Ghana and many places in Africa, is that instead of the lady perhaps asking for divorce, especially in the case when the man is cheating, she might also step out of the marriage and have a side guy. You know, sometimes they call the guy when the guy is younger than the woman as Ben 10. You know, I learned all these things in South Africa back then. So she would rather go outside of the marriage than to ask for divorce. And then they will come back together and live as though nothing is happening. So there are a lot of reasons contributing to the success of marriages in South Africa. Now, next on the list is Libya. Libya is a small population, just a little over 6 million people. And they are the type of people who hardly go outside of their tribe and their nation to marry. So they will rather resolve the issue with the husband or wife at any point in time rather than choosing to divorce, knowing that it is very, very difficult in Libya to remarry once you are divorced, especially for the woman. They have all manner of names they give to you. So they'll rather keep the marriage together and not break it, knowing the consequences, even if you have a good case. Now, Kenya, on the other hand, has something similar to what is happening in South Africa. Their form of dowries are also very expensive. I have this Kenyan friend who got married and the husband paid around $15,000 in dowries alone. And in their marriages, which is mostly customary, both families are present. So it's a family deal. It's a family transaction, not just one person. Two families are united. It is not something that is going to be easily broken. Now, talking about Kenya makes me want to think about Ghana. Not many years ago, it was just similar to what is happening in Kenya, where marriages were more about families rather than individuals. And they will literally tell you that the people seated here are all witnesses. So at any point, if you want to get a divorce, you have to get all these people back in order to make the divorce effective. And for some of these reasons, it was difficult in those days to have divorces in Ghana. But as the country became more modern and all that, it has totally changed. So these are some reasons why we have low divorce rate in these 5 countries listed. Now, let's take a look at the top 5 countries in Africa with the highest divorce rate. On the top of the list is our own Nigeria, and their percentage is quite high, really high. It's Nigeria, it's Ethiopia, it's Egypt, Algeria, and Lebanon. So what are the reasons why these countries are on the top of the list as the countries with the highest rate of divorce in Africa? Let's take Nigeria in the first place. So as I did the research, this is what I came to. That divorce rate among Muslims in Nigeria is quite low. So which group of people are actually divorcing in Nigeria? Which is actually the Christians. Surprisingly, the Christians. And some of the reasons given here as the cause of divorce in Nigeria are some of the things that are opposite of what Christianity actually talks about. The first on the list is lack of commitment. And then the second is infidelity. You have financial hardships and domestic violence. I mean, these 4 things, as a Christian, you would say it shouldn't have been the case. But unfortunately, that is the case. And that has caused 2.9, almost 3% of marriages among Christians in Nigeria to divorce. That is big, looking at their population. Now, second on the list is Ethiopia. The very same reasons that have sustained marriages in Mozambique is working in the opposite direction in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, ladies or young girls are given out in marriages at very, very young ages, starting from 15. In some cases, they quote 14. And so as the ladies get older, they see all the options that they could have gotten and all the development that has come to the country, and they are sort of not satisfied with what they were given when they were young, and then they move out. All right. And one of the things that I saw in most of the articles about divorce in Ethiopia was the fact that most of these young girls were given to older men. Okay, so if you are 15, you are given to, say, 40-year-old man or 35-year-old man. By the time you get to, say, 25 years old, your husband is about 60 years old. And that difference in age could be a big problem. So once the ladies are exposed to city life, and Ethiopia is beautiful. Addis Ababa is very beautiful. Once they're exposed to all that and social media and, they also want something better for themselves, then they are forced to leave the husband and move on with their lives. And that has been one of the causes of divorce in Ethiopia. Now, third on the list are Egypt, Algeria, and Lebanon, and their reasons are pretty similar. It starts off with economic factors, and some websites also give cases of abuse and lack of voice in marriages. All right, so three major problems here. Economic factors. So once they are married and sort of their expectations are not being met, okay, in terms of the women, what they wanted in a man is not being met, then they are sort of looking outside to see if they could get something better. And the issue of abuse in marriage, I don't think any woman should be abused in any marriage, no matter the case. And they also complain of lack of voice in these marriages. Wow, interesting. In Ghana today, divorce is on the rise. But because most of the marriages are done in the customary manner, which means the government don't actually have those marriages recorded in their books, when a divorce hit those marriages, it's not actually taken into data. So you don't actually see the numbers, the true numbers coming out. But it's very common to find divorced people around Ghana. And the most predominant reasons why people in Ghana will divorce is infidelity. I mean, this thing is becoming a new societal canker, where in the past it was unheard of to hear a woman stepping out in their marriage, sleeping with somebody outside of the marriage. But today in Ghana, these things are quite common, where a woman is married, she may have few kids with the husband, and she still has, a side guy, a boyfriend somewhere. Africa on the whole is quite changing. There's a lot of differences in the Africa that we knew 20 to 30 years ago and the Africa of today. So it's not just your country, but the whole of Africa. And again, one other thing that is causing divorce in marriages in Ghana is the corporate life that has caught up with the nation. The agenda to equalize men and women in the workplace has been pushed for so long, and now the ladies have a lot of access, to working in different places. And as a result, priorities shifted. Now, you find most of the ladies focus more on their jobs or on their career than their marriages, and that also hurt their families. If you go around the banks, the government institutions and all that, you find more females actively employed than males in Ghana today. And as a result, their focus on marriage, on family and nurturing and all that has been brought to the back end. And certainly is going to affect families. And whether that is good or bad, it's left to the families to decide. By the end of the day, we are hoping for an Africa where children can grow in a family setting, not single parenthood stuff. We want children to grow up having a mother, having a father. Okay, so if your wife is working in a bank and you have to leave home at, say, 6 a.m. and come back at 7 p.m. on a regular and work maybe half day on Saturday, then there is not a real time the family will have to bond. So these things have become a real challenge in families in Ghana, which is hurting a lot of families. And moving forward, I don't think this is going to change. I even think it's going to get worse. Divorce is going to get worse in Ghana, and I'm sure it's also the same in other places in Africa. But as a person, if your priority is getting married and staying married till you die, then perhaps you have to look at India, because they have the lowest rate of divorce in the world. It is literally no divorce in India, and it's quite interesting. Their culture, their customs, the way their families are set up is such that in order for you to even divorce, it is too stressful. It is unheard of. It is not a typical thing in India to find people divorced. They always have a way to figure out to let the families come back together. So maybe as an African, you want to go to Mozambique or Zimbabwe to find a wife if you want to have longevity in marriage. But if that is not your priority, then you might as well marry the lady next door. And in conclusion, I'll say this based on my Christian background. If you're a husband or a wife and your first priority, your line of thought when there is an issue in your marriage is to move on, then I think you marry for the wrong reason. Because wherever you are trying to move to certainly will come with its challenges and its problems. And I don't think you will want to continue moving. If it is something that can be resolved, I think you should work on it until you resolve it. If you look into your Bible, the only conditions that are given to you to divorce as a couple is under two conditions. One will be when there is infidelity, especially when the lady steps out of the marriage. And the second one is to an unbelieving spouse. If an unbelieving spouse decides to leave, then the person is allowed to leave. And in that case, the other partner can move on and remarry. But outside of this, if it is resolvable, then I encourage you to resolve it and find a place where the two of you can agree and move together as a couple. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. God bless you. Thank you so much for subscribing. And please help me share to as many people as possible as we grow this network. Until I come your way again, God bless you once again. And it's bye-bye for now.